Yo, what is up everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy channel, and in this video I'm going to be setting my fantasy football lineups heading into week 15 of the 2020 fantasy football season, so you guys can also get some advice on how to set your lineups across your fantasy football leagues as well. We're going to be doing half PPR, non-PPR, one quarterback, two quarterback, redraft, dynasty, all sorts of good stuff in this video. So without further ado, let's get into setting these lineups. So I'm in 3 fantasy football leagues and I made the playoffs in all of them. So we have 3 high stakes lineup decisions to make this week. And hopefully you guys will kind of get some insight on how you want to set your lineups this week by watching this video. So this is the first team right here. This is a 12-team league, non-PPR. We should probably take a look at my matchup right now quick. So my opponent had Robbie Anderson play on the Saturday night game last night, and he only had 2 points. So that is a very, very good thing. And I'm going to consider that when I'm setting my lineup here. So the first thing that we need to look at here is the fact that Drew Brees is he's starting, right? We'll verify that here quick, right? He was activated off of injured reserve and will start. So with that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and drop Taysom Hill. Bada bang, bada boom. I would have dropped Justin Jackson, but he already played on Thursday, and I'm not sure if I dropped Justin Jackson, if it would go through this week or next week. So I just went ahead and dropped Taysom Hill. The only reason I would want Taysom Hill maybe is if Drew Brees got hurt again and Taysom Hill started next week against Minnesota. But I'm just assuming Brees will be back, knock on wood. Okay, so we're good there with quarterback. And speaking of setting lineups, making some good lineup decisions, we have been dealing with some very bad injuries in this league in particular. Christian McCaffrey, if you have him on your team, you've probably struggled. We have been able to make it to the playoffs. We're in the semifinals, so that is super clutch. And then Will Fuller, I also had on my team, and he is missing the rest of the season with a suspension as of like a few weeks ago. But that's why it's important to have depth. So at our wide receiver spots, we do have Tyler Lockett and Chris Godwin. I love Chris Godwin this week in a good matchup against Atlanta. The only worry is that the Buccaneers will get up like really big and they won't have to throw the ball that much. But the Buccaneers are also without Ronald Jones, I believe, as of now, from what I've heard. So they might be forced to throw the ball. We'll have to see what kind of workload Fournette gets as the starter. But Tyler Lockett, he's been pretty cold lately, honestly. He had a few big games kind of to start the season. He hasn't been dreadful, but this is still a tough matchup. But I am going to start him in this league right here. It's kind of hard to sit him just because you never know like what kind of game he's going to have. He can blow up, and you don't really want a 30-point game on your bench. So you just got to live with the ups and downs that Lockett has provided this year. And man, I really wish I had McCaffrey or Fuller to put in this flex spot, but Mostert is going to be my flex player. He is a running back against the Dallas Cowboys. That's a very good matchup. And then speaking of running backs, we got 2 other guys right here in the running back spots. We got Chris Carson in that same tough matchup against Washington, but he's been solid. I'm expecting a solid game just because of his volume. He's a good player. And then David Montgomery against my Minnesota Vikings. Montgomery has been hot lately. You cannot really afford to bench him right now, especially with the options I have on my bench. The only guy I really considered playing was Chase Claypool over Raheem Mostert. And Mostert is coming off of a little bit of an injury, but his matchup is so good against Dallas that he doesn't even need a lot of volume to have a good game. And Chase Claypool recently, he has not been producing well at all. He can catch a touchdown for sure. He has big playability, but so does Raheem Mostert. So I'm just going to go with Mostert. And I mentioned the fact that my opponent only getting 2 points out of Robbie Anderson will affect how I impact my decision making. I feel like Raheem Mostert is just a little bit safer. It's hard to say because he's coming off an injury. Neither Mostert or Claypool are necessarily safe plays this week, but just the nature of the running back position, the fact that this is a non-PPR league, so that kind of takes away from Chase Claypool's likelihood of, getting more catches than Mostert. That kind of eliminates that benefit. So I'm just going to slightly lean towards Mostert there. We got Younghoe Koo, who apparently the Bucs are giving up the 7th fewest fantasy points to kickers, but you know what? I don't care. He's been a stud all year. And then this is what I mentioned in my previous setting my week 14 lineups video, is that I like to stock up on defenses in the fantasy playoffs so that I have options and my opponents do not. So we have a nice matchup here. The Cleveland Browns against the Giants. I'm playing them over the Bears against the Vikings. So I'm going to know pretty early on how my team is doing because most of these games are at noon with the exception of Drew Brees and my defense. And then I also forgot to mention, speaking of defenses, the only transaction I made this week was I dropped the Carolina DST after their terrible performance last week. They have bad matchups moving forward. Who do they have next week? Yeah, they got Green Bay and Washington. So they got 5 points last night. So, I mean, I was never going to play them against the Packers, but I dropped them. I activated Justin Jackson. So that's pretty much it. And then just to quickly recap last week, I usually do that at the beginning, but I forgot to do that. This is our first round of the playoffs. We beat this team by 10 points. He had Josh Allen on Monday night. He needed like 10 more points out of him to come back, but we were able to hold him off. We had good games from Montgomery, who actually was I made a video last week where I had 2 running back starts of the week and 2 running back sits of the week. I'll go over those in this video within the context of like my lineup. So Montgomery was a start of the week for me. He had a very, very long touchdown for like 80 something yards. So he had a really good game. He also had 42 receiving yards. He's been very involved in the passing game lately. That is awesome to see. He didn't get a lot of volume, honestly, because the game really got away from Houston very quickly. So they didn't need to really, rely on their like main starting players that much in that game. But he had the long touchdown. He had the receiving work. It worked out for Montgomery. That was one of my starts of the week. I'll be talking about another start of the week later in this video. And yeah, this is the lineup that we set last week. We did pretty good. Only flaw was really playing the Panthers defense over the Bears. There was a 15-point difference right there. Yeah. I hope my receivers play a little bit better, but I think we're ready to move on to the next lineup, and that is right here. So we're going to recap last week before we get into setting the lineup. So last week actually wasn't a playoff matchup, but I needed to win and or have the team behind me in the rankings lose. I think we both won, so I still retained my spot in the playoffs because I still had the points tiebreaker. So I got in as the number 4 seed in this league. This is a half PPR, I believe a 10-team league, and this was my matchup for the first round of the playoffs. As you can see, I won. Sorry, I said first round of the playoffs. I literally did not mean to say that. I meant to say this is the matchup that got me into the playoffs, I should say. We're going into the first round of the playoffs now. So we're going to be talking about some of these players, and I'm sure you're wondering about a lot of these guys. James Conner had a terrible week. Kyler Murray, do you play him still? Melvin Gordon already played on Saturday. He had a really good game. So yeah, we're just going to talk about all these guys. You can see my lineups, who did well, who did not well. And actually, I was kind of like hovering over the projected points. These are their actual points right here. Jalen Hurts, what are we going to do with him this week? We got a tough decision to make with him. So recent activity that we did, we dropped Darrell Henderson and added Gus Edwards for $0 fab dollars. And I also dropped Justin Jackson because he was on my IR and I didn't want to cut anyone else to make room for him. All right, so here is our matchup for this week. We already have some players who have played because there were a few games before Sunday that happened. So like I said, Melvin Gordon, he had a tremendous game, and I really needed that after Hunter Henry had a 15-point performance from my opponent. So that's really awesome that Melvin Gordon could ball out. He got in the end zone a couple times. So yeah, he had 22 points. Wow, that is huge. So let's go ahead and set this lineup here. So right out of the gate, you guys can see I did not play DJ Moore. He had a very good game. I can never play him in the right game. Whenever he has a good matchup, I feel like he doesn't do well when he's in my lineup. And then I didn't play him against Green Bay because he was coming off of, I think it was the COVID list, or he was injured or something. I was like, you know what? I like my options better because I do have really good receivers in this league. So I wish I would have been able to fit DJ Moore into my lineup, but I still like my receivers. We got Amari Cooper against San Francisco, Calvin Ridley against Tampa Bay, Allen Robinson against Minnesota, and Tyreek Hill against New Orleans. I love all these guys this week. Amari Cooper is probably my least favorite. If I was going to, in the past, when I was considering who I would bench for DJ Moore, it would have been Amari Cooper. Especially like, Calvin Ridley is going to most likely do well because Julio Jones is out and Calvin Ridley typically does well. Allen Robinson, he's been hot lately with Mitch Trubisky. The Minnesota DST does not scare me. And Tyreek Hill, you got to play him every single week, even though it is the Saints defense. So yeah, let's go ahead and look at our quarterbacks now. We got Kyler Murray against Philadelphia. I am going to stick with him. He's been not as great lately as he was to start the season, but I am going to stick with him. And then this is where a decision really needs to be made, guys, and that is Jared Goff or Jalen Hurts. Now, I was not high on the Philadelphia offense last week with a rookie quarterback playing against New Orleans, who had been pretty much the best defense in the league at that point. And I did make a running back on the Eagles. You can probably guess who, a sit of the week, and that did not work out well for me. I'll talk about that in a second when we get to this next league. But yeah, I think I'm going to go with... as of now, I'll tell you what, guys, I'm going with Jared Goff as of now, but I need to do a little soul searching. If I do end up putting Jalen Hurts into that lineup, I will comment it down below and put it in the description. It's very close for me. Jalen, I don't know. Jared Goff's matchup is so good. He has not been playing well lately. Not throwing a lot of touchdowns, like 0, 3, 0, 1, 1. I mean, I don't know. Jalen Hurts does have that rushing upside, so it's not a bad matchup against Arizona. It's really tough. It's honestly tough. They both have good matchups. For now, I'm going to stick with Goff, but I could very well change it. And like I said, I'll comment it down below and put it in the description if I do. Matt Ryan, I would highly not recommend playing him. I think it's a tougher matchup against Tampa Bay. Their defense hasn't been great lately, but without Julio Jones, Matt Ryan typically does not do very well. And look at how he's been playing the last few weeks. Literally awful. Like terrible. You know, just very bad. Like, I'm in a league where you have to play players and try to score the least amount of points possible. I know it's kind of weird, but it's a thing I'm in. And I would consider Matt Ryan one of the better plays this week, just because he's been so poor lately and he's without Julio Jones. So this isn't an official like sit of the week video, but if I was making one for quarterbacks, Matt Ryan would definitely be on that list. Kind of as a guy who some people would maybe consider starting, and I'm just not excited about. Yeah, and the last decision we have to make here, James Conner. What the heck do we do with him? He's questionable for Monday night against Cincinnati, so that's already bad that he's playing later in the week. I do have Benny Snell, but man, 10 carries against Buffalo for 18 yards. Missed a couple games before that. He's dealing with an injury right now. He hasn't been looking very good. I think you might think I'm crazy. I think I'm gonna play Gus Edwards against Jacksonville. I think I'm gonna do it. I know this could blow up in my face completely. You might think, oh, that's so risky. Gus Edwards, you know, you look at his volume, you know, he got 7 carries, 9 carries. But he's actually doing something with his carries. You know what I'm saying? Like 2 touchdowns. He had 100 yards the week before. He did get in the end zone the week before. So, and against Jacksonville, that's the key here is the matchup is he only needs, you know, a big play or two to outperform James Conner potentially, because I don't know if what I expect from James Conner. Because he hasn't looked good. He's dinged up. And I don't know if he's going to get a lot of volume. You know what I'm saying? And against Cincinnati, last time they played, he had 13 carries, 36 yards. You know, so like, obviously you don't want to read too much into like a pass matchup. It could just be what, you know, it could be for whatever reason he didn't do that bad. But he just hasn't performed well, except against Jacksonville, who is, you know, who Gus Edwards is playing. So, yeah, it hasn't been since like the halfway point in the season that, you know, James Conner's done anything. So you can play James Conner if you want. I won't blame you if you know, were to play James Conner over Gus Edwards. But for me, it's tough. You know, it would be more of a decision, honestly, if James Conner was already ruled out and Benny Snell was starting. I was like, okay, do I play Benny Snell or Gus Edwards? But when you have Snell and James Conner, you know, Snell's inefficiency along with James Conner being injured, it's just tough. I could see them. And overall, the Steelers' offense has looked poor lately. I could see them kind of getting right in this game against Cincinnati. But man, it's going to be tough. I don't know. I'm kind of off of James Conner this week. We'll talk about him a little later as well in my other league. But yeah, these are all the decisions that I made this week. I'm also playing Gronk at tight end over Ingram or Ertz. Ertz has been such a disappointment. So that being said, let's go ahead and move on to our last league. And I don't know if I mentioned this is a half PPR league. 10 teams, first round of the playoffs. And here is another half PPR league. This is a 1 quarterback Dynasty league. This is the second round of the playoffs, semifinals. I won last week. So here's the matchup from last week. We ended up winning 118.14 to 93.82. You can just kind of look at the box score. Jonathan Taylor went crazy. I had good games from Hopkins, Cooper, Clyde had a decent game. McKissic, he was one of my starts of the week. And I said he was a good bet for double digits. This is half PPR, so in full PPR, he would have been into double digits. He's close enough in half PPR. And I even said in my start of the week video, I did like him more in PPR than non-PPR. And we'll take a look at my bench, and you'll see one big thing right here, and that is Miles Sanders, who was a sit of the week for me. You've got to be kidding me. I finally sit the guy, and he does this. And I even said in my sit of the week video, to be fair, I said I had him as like a low end RB2 with upside. So I wasn't, you know, going out there and saying you have to sit Miles Sanders, but I decided to do it. I publicly proclaimed that I would play McKissic over Sanders, and McKissic had a decent game, but Sanders, he just went crazy. But exactly what I said he would need to do to have a good game, he did. He needed to have a big, long run and get in the end zone to have a good game, because he always has that capability regardless of the matchup. Miles Sanders does. So 14 for 115, I believe his touchdown was 80 yards or 80 something yards. So you can do the math. The rest of his carries, like, he had most of them on one carry, but he did get another short yardage touchdown. He had 4 catches, which was nice to see. Tied for his most in the season, it looks like. So yeah, hopefully, you know what? It was a tough matchup against New Orleans. I was wrong about Miles Sanders last week. Hopefully Jalen Hurts has rejuvenated this offense a little bit. Hopefully they will involve Sanders a little bit more. I can't remember the exact numbers, but his snap percentage was a little bit down. And you can see like his volume was kind of iffy, but apparently his snap percentage went up a little bit. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. I just heard that. So that's promising to see as well. And it's kind of weird. His 2 best games of the season were against New Orleans, who I believe at the time was giving up the fewest fantasy points to running backs on the year, and then against Pittsburgh, who has also been one of the better defenses in the league this year. So it's crazy. And even against the Rams, who have a very good defense. So what's up with that? So now that he's playing Arizona, a defense that doesn't scare him, he's probably going to flop, but he is definitely going to make my lineup. And will this not let me go back? All right, cool. Well, that was my bench anyways. This is the matchup for this week. A few players did already play. Justin Herbert played for my opponent. He had a very good game. Austin Eckler had a decent game, 9.9 points. But you know what? I'll take that from Eckler. Herbert kind of took away from Eckler, although a lot of times it's not rare to see Herbert and Eckler both go off because, you know, Eckler catches so many passes. But we're going to go and set our lineup here. And I did make a few changes to the lineup this week compared to last week. Notably, I put Miles Sanders back into the lineup, and I put Marvin Jones into the lineup. And the guys I put on the bench were J.D. McKissic and the aforementioned James Conner. So, like I said last week, I like J.D. McKissic as a start of the week, but I wasn't disappointed with him at all, and you could definitely play him this week depending on your options. Kind of my thinking here was, well, first of all, just kind of recap what McKissic did. He was very involved in the running game more so than the passing game. I thought he would be more involved in the passing game. He had 4 targets, which is still decent for a running back, but against Seattle, who knows? He should have a decent workload again. I believe Dwayne Haskins might start. I'm not sure if that's been decided yet. I kind of like McKissic a little bit more with Alex Smith in there dumping it off. But either way, I think he'll be fine. And man, my computer's being goofy. But yeah, I was also going to mention, I forgot to say earlier when I was talking about Miles Sanders, my other sit of the week was the Falcons running back, Todd Gurley, and he had a poor game. So just kind of quickly recap. I know I'm doing this in the middle of another video, but start of the week, I'd say I was 2 for 2. I said McKissic would get to double digits. He was close enough. And then sits of the week, I was 1 for 2 because Gurley definitely did bad, and Miles Sanders did crazy, so that's why we have him in our lineup again. So the other decision I made was to bench James Conner. I put Marvin Jones in there. So there's a lot of stuff going on with this. So I got to kind of like, how do I explain this? So McKissic is a good play, but I do like the upside of Marvin Jones more. Now there's another layer of this. If Matthew Stafford doesn't play in that Lions game, I would put McKissic in for Marvin Jones. Does that make sense? So I like Marvin Jones if Stafford plays enough to play him over James Conner or J.D. McKissic. And I like McKissic more than Conner. The only way Conner does well is if he gets a goal line carry, or if he somehow miraculously like gets better from his injury and looks good again. But if I know one thing about James Conner, it's that he does not deal well with injuries. So yeah, those are some of the decisions I made this week. We're obviously going to roll with Jonathan Taylor. I didn't make a start of the week video for week 15 for running backs or anything, but if I did, I don't even know if it'd be fair to put Jonathan Taylor on that list because he's been just dynamite lately. But he would be a guy that I would start 100% of the time. My computer's being so weird right now. But I'm trying to show you what he did last week. His volume has been very good lately. 22 carries, 13 carries, 20 carries, 4 receptions, 3 receptions, 2 receptions. So he's been very involved. This is a great matchup against Houston. This is the same matchup that prompted me to promote David Montgomery to a start of the week last week in that video. So yeah, he's a must play. I mean, I don't think there's any combination of players you could have that you would want to sit him. You would have to make some sort of crazy trade or have an auction league where you went all in on like some of the top running backs that panned out. But Jonathan Taylor in this matchup, you got to play him. Tom Brady, I love against Atlanta, especially without Ronald Jones in there. He should be able to throw on them a little bit. And Atlanta's run defense, guys, has actually been really good. So it's not like they're just going to be able to run all over Atlanta or anything. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I don't like the matchup against New Orleans, but I would still rather play him over McKissic or James Conner. Miles Sanders, like I said 500 times already, I'm playing him. He proved me wrong. And then Amari Cooper against San Francisco, I'm playing him. Marvin Jones against Tennessee if Stafford plays. Again, I'll just reiterate, if Stafford is not playing, I'm putting McKissic in at this flex spot, moving Hopkins to a wide receiver spot. Godwin against Atlanta, I talked about him earlier. I love him this week. Good matchup. And then DeAndre Hopkins against Philadelphia. You never sit D-Hop, man. And then Dallas Goedert against Arizona. I mean, he's been solid. Matchup doesn't scare me. Chargers defense did pretty poor. In hindsight, I wish I would have put the Bears in against Minnesota. But yeah, that's pretty much it for all of our decisions. Other guys I'm deciding to not play in this league. This is a very deep league. Did I mention this is a Dynasty league, half PPR, 10 teams, second round of the playoffs. So if we win this game, if we win in any of our leagues, it's on to the championship. So we were 3 for 3 last week. We're going to try to do it again. Other guys I considered maybe playing, like Mike Williams, but I didn't play him. I don't think I would have played him over any of these guys. Deebo Samuel, he's always injured, so I didn't even have a chance to play him. Cortland Sutton, he's been out all year. Kittle, I mean, RIP, man. I wish I had him, but Goddard is not a bad backup to have. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much going to do it for this video of setting our lineups. I hope that was helpful. I hope I gave some sort of insight on what I'm doing. I tried to provide some context, like based on what has already happened in the week, such as playing Marvin Jones over McKissic for that upside if Stafford is playing, because my opponent already had a couple good games, and he's the number 1 seed. He's got Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Woods, Robinson, Jefferson, Kelsey, so he's loaded. You know, I like McKissick's consistency. I think he'll have a good game, but I just think Marvin Jones has the ability to have like a multi-touchdown game or something if Stafford plays. I want to reiterate that. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much gonna do it for the video. We set our lineups. I kind of recapped my running back starts of the week from last week, and even though I didn't make a start of the week video for any positions this week, I hope this kind of showed you what I'm thinking about a lot of players for this week. And yeah, that's gonna do it for the video. Thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure to drop a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more fantasy football content, and good luck in the playoffs, guys. I'll be rooting for you, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out.